When Ethan Vale sat down at the wrong table in an upscale restaurant he couldn't afford, he had no idea the elegant woman across from him would become both his salvation and his greatest battle. Claire Holloway looked like she had everything: wealth, beauty, grace, but beneath that polished surface was a prisoner desperate to escape. Their accidental meeting sparked a love that would challenge a billionaire empire, threaten his custody of his daughter, and force them both to choose between safety and freedom. This is their story. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, hit that like button and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The engine light on Ethan's 15-year-old pickup had been on for 3 weeks. He knew what it meant: timing belt, maybe $200 he didn't have. But tonight, he had bigger problems. His daughter's birthday was in 2 days, and he'd promised her something special. Not the kind of special other kids got, with bounce houses and magicians, but special enough that she wouldn't notice how broke they really were. He pulled into the parking lot of Antonio's, an Italian place on 5th Street that he'd driven past 1,000 times but never once considered entering. The valet looked at his truck like it was leaking something toxic. "Just picking up," Ethan said quickly, climbing out before the kid could tell him to move. Inside, the restaurant was all low lighting and white tablecloths, the kind of place where people whispered instead of talked. Ethan felt immediately out of place in his work jacket, still smelling faintly of motor oil despite the shower he'd taken. He approached the hostess stand, where a woman in all black gave him a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Reservation?" "Pickup, under Vale." She tapped at her tablet, frowning. "I'm not seeing anything." Ethan's stomach dropped. He'd called this in himself, confirmed it twice. "I ordered the chicken marsala, the kids' spaghetti, and, sir, we don't do takeout." The words hit him like cold water. He stared at her. "What?" "Antonio's doesn't offer takeout service. Perhaps you're thinking of Antonio's Bistro. That's on 7th Street. Heat crawled up his neck. Wrong restaurant. Wrong goddamn restaurant. He'd been so focused on getting the order right, on making sure Lily had something nice, that he'd driven to the wrong place entirely. "Right," he said, backing away. "My mistake." But as he turned, he caught sight of the bar area, quieter, less formal. A thought formed, desperate and stupid. He was already here. The other Antonio's was 20 minutes away. He could grab a drink, something cheap, make the drive feel less wasted. Lily was with Mrs. Chen next door until 9. He had time. The bartender was friendlier than the hostess, and Ethan ordered the cheapest beer they had, which still cost more than he'd usually spend in a week. He was halfway through it when a server appeared at his elbow. "Mr. Holloway?" Ethan looked up. "What?" "Your table is ready, sir." "I think you've got the wrong—" But she was already walking away, and Ethan saw his opportunity. Not to scam anyone, but to sit down for 10 minutes in a place like this, to feel for just a moment like he wasn't drowning. He followed her. The table was in a corner, half hidden by a decorative screen. Intimate. Expensive. Wrong. But the server pulled out his chair and he sat, still holding his beer bottle like an idiot. "Your guest will be joining you shortly," she said, and disappeared before he could correct her. Ethan should have left. He knew that. But his feet hurt from standing in the shop all day, and the chair was comfortable, and for just a few minutes he wanted to pretend his life wasn't held together with duct tape and prayer. Then she appeared. The woman was maybe 30, with dark hair pulled back in a way that looked effortless, but probably wasn't, and a gray dress that probably cost more than his truck. She moved like someone who'd been taught how to walk, graceful in a way that seemed both natural and rehearsed. She stopped at the table, and Ethan saw the exact moment she realized he wasn't who she expected. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice quiet. "I think there's been a mistake." Ethan stood so fast he nearly knocked over his beer. "Yeah, the server thought I was someone else. I'll go." But she didn't move. She just looked at him, and there was something in her expression he couldn't quite name. Not anger. Not confusion. Something else. "Are you waiting for someone?" she asked. "No. You?" "I was." She glanced back toward the entrance, then at the table, then at him again. "But I don't think he's coming." The server reappeared, smiling brightly. "Ms. Holloway, so glad you could make it. Can I start you both with some wine?" The woman, Holloway apparently, opened her mouth, probably to explain the mistake. But then she closed it again and looked at Ethan with something that might have been amusement or might have been desperation. "Actually," she said. Yes, the Pinot Noir. The server beamed and left. Ethan stared. You don't have to stay, the woman said, sitting down. I needed to not be alone at this table right now. Ethan should have walked away. Instead, he sat back down. Ethan, he said. Vale. Claire. She didn't offer her last name, even though the server had already given it away. I'm guessing you're not Mr. Holloway. Not unless your family's really open-minded about who they let in. That got a small smile out of her, and Ethan felt something loosen in his chest. She had a nice smile, the kind that looked like it didn't get used enough. So who were you supposed to meet? He asked. Someone my parents think is appropriate. The way she said the word made it sound like a prison sentence. You? I'm supposed to be picking up dinner from the other Antonios. Got the wrong place. That's a significant navigation error. Yeah, well, I'm having that kind of week. The wine came. Ethan tried not to think about how much it probably cost. Claire poured for both of them, which felt surreal. And then they were just sitting there, two strangers at the wrong table, drinking wine neither of them had ordered. So what do you do, Ethan Vale? Claire asked. I fix cars. Got a shop on the east side. You? She hesitated, like the question was complicated. I manage family investments. That sounds important. It sounds boring. She took a drink, longer than she probably meant to. Tell me about your shop. So he did, surprising himself. He told her about the garage he'd bought 5 years ago with money he'd saved and borrowed and barely scraped together, about the clients who paid late or not at all, about the satisfaction of making something broken run again. He didn't tell her about the bills or the custody lawyer's retainer he still couldn't afford, or the fact that Lily's mother had been gone for 3 years and he still didn't know how to answer when his daughter asked if Mommy was coming back. But Claire listened like she actually cared, and that was strange enough that he kept talking. What about you? He asked finally. What do you actually do when you're not managing family investments? She looked at her wine glass. I'm not sure I remember. Come on, hobbies, interests, things you do for fun. I play piano. Or I did. I haven't in a while. Why not? Because it's not productive. She said it like she was quoting someone. Because there are better uses of my time. That's a terrible reason. Yes, she said simply. It is. They ordered food, which was insane because Ethan couldn't afford it, but the server assumed they were together, and Claire didn't correct her, and suddenly there was pasta and bread and more wine. Ethan tried to calculate how many extra hours he'd need to work to cover this, then gave up and decided to hate himself later. Do you have family? Claire asked. A daughter, Lily. She's 7. Something shifted in Claire's expression. That must be wonderful. It's terrifying. Best thing I ever did, though. And her mother? Gone. He said it flat, the way he'd learned to. She left when Lily was 4. Haven't heard from her since. I'm sorry. Don't be. We're better off. He meant it, mostly. What about you? No children? No husband? Just parents who have very specific ideas about what my life should look like. The guy who didn't show up tonight? Marcus. She said the name like it tasted bad. He's a venture capitalist, impressive portfolio, good family, completely uninterested in me as a person. Then why were you meeting him? Because my parents arranged it. Because it's what's expected. Because I'm 32 years old and apparently my window for acceptable marriage is closing. That's medieval. That's my life. They ate. The food was incredible, but Ethan barely tasted it. He was too aware of Claire across from him, the way her shoulders had started to relax, the way she'd stopped sitting quite so perfectly straight. She looked different now than when she'd first walked in, less like a painting and more like a person. Can I ask you something? She said. Sure. Why did you stay? When you realized this wasn't your table, Ethan thought about it. Because I'm tired, he said honestly. Because I work 16-hour days and I can't remember the last time I sat in a nice restaurant, even at the wrong table. Because for just a few minutes I wanted to pretend I was someone who belonged here. Claire looked at him for a long moment. I pretend I belong here every day, she said quietly. It doesn't help. Something passed between them then, an understanding that had nothing to do with the wine or the accidental meeting. Two people who didn't fit in their own lives, sitting at the wrong table, telling the truth. "I should go," Ethan said, even though he didn't want to. "I have to pick up my daughter." "Of course." He signaled for the check, his heart already sinking at what it would be. But when the server came, Claire handed over a credit card before he could even reach for his wallet. "You don't have to—" "I invited you to stay," she said. "This is on me." "Claire, please." She looked at him, and there was something vulnerable in it. "Let me do this." So he did, feeling strange and grateful and slightly ashamed all at once. Outside, the valet brought his truck around, and Ethan tried not to see it through Claire's eyes. The rust spots, the cracked windshield, the engine that rattled when it idled. "This is me," he said unnecessarily. "It suits you." "That's a polite way of saying it's a piece of junk." "That's not what I meant." She was standing close enough that he could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive. "I meant it looks like it's been places, like it has stories. Mostly stories about breaking down." She smiled, but it faded quickly. "Thank you for tonight, for staying. Thank you for the meal, and the wine, and for not calling security when I sat at your table." Maybe it was the right table after all. Ethan didn't know what to say to that. So he just nodded, climbed into his truck, and drove away. In the rearview mirror, he saw her standing there, watching him go, looking small and alone in the parking lot lights. He picked up Lily from Mrs. Chen's, listened to her chatter about the cartoon she'd watched, and tucked her into bed with a promise that her birthday would be special. Then he sat at his kitchen table, looking at the business card Claire had slipped into his jacket pocket when he wasn't paying attention. Claire Holloway. Private number written on the back in careful handwriting. He should throw it away. He had no business calling a woman like that, someone from a world so far removed from his own that they might as well be different species. She probably gave him the number out of pity. She probably wouldn't even remember him tomorrow. But he didn't throw it away. He set it on the counter next to the stack of bills he couldn't pay and the birthday cake mix he'd bought on sale, and went to bed thinking about the way she'd smiled when she thought he wasn't looking. 3 days later, Ethan was under a Honda Civic when his phone rang. He ignored it. He was always ignoring it, usually because it was bill collectors or Lily's school or someone else who needed something he couldn't give. But it rang again, and finally he rolled out from under the car and answered. "Vale Auto." "Is this Ethan?" He didn't recognize the voice at first. Then he did, and his stomach did something complicated. "Claire, I'm sorry to call you at work. I found your shop online. I hope that's not—" "It's fine." He walked outside into the small lot behind the garage where the sun was too bright and his shirt was covered in grease. "Is everything okay?" "I was wondering if you'd like to have coffee, if you're free." Ethan looked back at the shop, at the 2 cars he needed to finish by end of day, at the stack of invoices on his desk that weren't going to pay themselves. "When?" "Now? I know it's short notice. Where?" She gave him an address, and 20 minutes later he was walking into a coffee shop in a part of town where the lattes had names he couldn't pronounce. Claire was already there, sitting in the back corner, wearing jeans and a sweater that probably cost more than his mortgage payment. She looked nervous. "Hi," she said as he sat down. "Hi. I wasn't sure you'd come." "I wasn't sure you'd actually call. I almost didn't." She wrapped her hands around her cup. "I've been thinking about that night, about our conversation." "Yeah?" "I haven't stopped thinking about it, actually. About you." Ethan's heart was doing things it had no business doing. "Claire, I know this is strange. I know we don't know each other, but I haven't talked to someone like that in, I don't know how long. Someone who didn't want something from me, who didn't have an agenda. I don't have much to offer in the agenda department." "That's exactly my point." She leaned forward. "Can I be honest with you?" "Please." "My life is very controlled. Every lunch, every event, every conversation. It's all managed, calculated. My parents have been grooming me to take over their foundation since I was 16, and in all that time I don't think anyone has ever asked me what I actually want." "What do you want?" The question seemed to surprise her. "I don't know. That's the problem. I've been so busy being who they need me to be that I forgot to figure out who I am." Ethan understood that better than he'd like to admit. "After Lily's mom left," he said, "I spent about 6 months just trying to survive. Making sure she ate, making sure she got to school, keeping the lights on. I forgot I was supposed to be a person too, not just a dad. Took a while to remember. How did you remember? Lily asked me one day why I never smiled anymore. She was 5 years old, and she noticed that I'd forgotten how to be happy. He rubbed his face. So I started trying, started doing small things that were just for me. Playing guitar again, reading books, taking her to the park even when I was exhausted because watching her on the swings made me feel human. Claire looked at him like he'd said something profound, which he definitely hadn't. I want that, she said quietly. I want to feel human. You are human, Claire. You'd be surprised. They talked for 2 hours. Ethan forgot about the cars waiting for him, forgot about the bills, forgot about everything except the woman across from him, who laughed at his bad jokes and asked real questions and seemed genuinely interested in his life. When he finally checked his phone, he had 4 missed calls from the shop. I have to go, he said reluctantly. Me too. I have a dinner thing, another Marcus situation. You're still doing those? For now. She stood, and he did too. Ethan, can I ask you something? Would you want to do this again? Coffee, or dinner, or something? He should say no. He should recognize this for what it was, a bad idea that would only get worse. But he looked at her, at the hope in her eyes, and found himself nodding. Yeah, he said. I'd like that. Her smile was worth every minute of trouble this was definitely going to cause. The something turned into several somethings. Coffee became lunch, became dinner, at a small Thai place, where nobody knew Claire's last name. They were careful at first, meeting during his lunch breaks or after Lily went to bed, keeping things casual. But casual was hard when every conversation felt like uncovering something essential, when every shared meal made the rest of his life seem dimmer by comparison. 3 weeks in, Claire asked to meet Lily. They were sitting in his truck in the parking lot of a diner, rain drumming on the roof, sharing fries from a paper bag. Ethan had told her about Lily's upcoming school play, how his daughter was nervous about forgetting her lines. I'd like to see it, Claire said. The play? And meet her, Lily, if that's okay. Ethan's chest tightened. You sure about that? Why wouldn't I be? Because meeting my kid is different than having coffee. It's real. This already feels real to me. He wanted to argue, to list all the reasons this was a terrible idea, but the truth was he wanted it too. Wanted Claire to be part of his actual life, not just the stolen moments between obligations. Okay, he said. Yeah, let's do it. The play was on a Saturday afternoon. Ethan sat in the middle school auditorium, surrounded by other parents with their phones out, recording every second. Claire sat beside him, wearing a simple dress and looking so out of place among the yoga pants and baseball caps that several people did double takes. When Lily walked on stage in her tree costume, she was tree number 3 in a very experimental interpretation of environmental conservation. Ethan felt Claire's hand find his. She's wonderful, Claire whispered. Lily didn't forget her lines. She delivered all 7 of them with serious concentration, then beamed at the applause. Afterward, in the lobby, Ethan introduced them. Lily, this is my friend Claire. His daughter looked up at Claire with frank curiosity. You're really pretty. Thank you. You were an excellent tree. I was the best tree. The other trees kept giggling. Lily took Claire's hand without hesitation. Do you want to get ice cream with us? Dad always gets ice cream after plays. Claire looked at Ethan, who shrugged helplessly. If that's okay with you? I'd love to. The ice cream shop was crowded and sticky and nothing like the places Claire probably usually went, but she didn't seem to mind. She sat across from Lily in a cracked vinyl booth, listening intently as his daughter explained the complex social dynamics of 2nd grade. And then Madison said that horses were better than unicorns, which is obviously wrong because unicorns can fly and horses can't, but she said flying wasn't fair because horses are real and unicorns aren't, which I think is a stupid rule because if we're picking favorites, we should pick the cool thing, not the real thing, right? I think you make an excellent point, Claire said seriously. Reality is often overrated. Lily grinned, chocolate ice cream on her chin. I like you. I like you too. Ethan watched them together and felt something crack open in his chest, something that felt dangerously like hope. Later, after he'd put Lily to bed and Claire had gone home, his daughter appeared in his doorway. Dad? What's up, bug? Is Claire your girlfriend? Ethan's brain short-circuited. We're just friends. But you like her. Yeah, I do. Me too. Lily climbed into bed beside him, which she did sometimes when she was thinking hard about something. She's different from other grown-ups. How so? She listens like kid stuff matters. Not like she's pretending, like she actually cares about unicorns. She's pretty special. Are you going to marry her? Lily, because if you did, she could live with us, and then you wouldn't be sad anymore. Ethan pulled her close, his throat tight. I'm not sad, Bug. You are sometimes. I see it. She looked up at him. But you weren't today. You were happy. He kissed the top of her head. Yeah, I was. After she fell asleep, Ethan lay awake thinking about Claire, about the way she'd looked at his daughter like Lily was something precious, about the way his life had started to feel less like survival and more like living. And for the first time in years, he let himself want something more. The invitation came on thick cardstock, the kind that cost more per square inch than Ethan's weekly grocery budget. Claire handed it to him during one of their Tuesday lunches, sliding it across the table like it might explode. My mother's hosting a charity gala next month, she said. She wants me to bring someone. Ethan looked at the embossed lettering, the formal script that probably required a magnifying glass to print. And you're thinking of bringing me. I'm thinking of introducing you to my parents, officially. Claire, I don't think... I know it's a lot. I know what I'm asking. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. But we've been doing this for 2 months now, sneaking around, meeting in diners and coffee shops like we're doing something wrong. I don't want to hide anymore. Ethan thought about the previous Saturday, when Claire had shown up at the shop wearing jeans and helped him change Mrs. Patterson's oil, getting grease under her fingernails, and laughing when he told her she was doing it wrong. He thought about the way Lily had started asking when Claire was coming over again, the way his daughter had drawn a picture of the three of them and stuck it on the fridge. Your parents are going to hate me, he said. Probably. I don't own a tux. We can rent one. I won't fit in with your world, Claire. I don't fit in with my world either. That's the whole point. He looked at her, at the determination in her eyes, and felt his resistance crumbling. What do I need to know? Relief washed over her face. My father is Richard Holloway. He built Holloway Industries from the ground up, mostly through commercial real estate and private equity. My mother, Victoria, runs the Holloway Foundation. That's what the gala is for. They're both very particular about appearances. How particular? The kind where my date's net worth gets discussed before his personality. Then I'm screwed. You're honest. You're kind. You're a good father. She reached across the table, taking his hand. Those things matter more than money. Not in their world. Maybe it's time their world changed. The gala was at the Meridian Hotel, the kind of place Ethan had driven past but never imagined entering. The ballroom looked like something from a movie, all crystal chandeliers and marble floors, with enough flowers to supply a dozen funerals. Men in tuxedos that actually fit them properly mingled with women wearing jewelry that could probably pay off Ethan's mortgage. Claire appeared at his side, wearing a blue dress that made his brain stop working for a second. You clean up nice, she said. I look like I'm playing dress up. You look perfect. She took his arm. Ready? Absolutely not. Good. Neither am I. They moved through the crowd, Claire greeting people with the kind of practiced ease that came from a lifetime of these events. Ethan tried not to feel like an exhibit at a museum, but the stares didn't help. He caught fragments of whispered conversations. Who is that? Claire's date? I heard he owns a garage. Then Claire's parents materialized, and Ethan understood immediately where she'd learned to hold herself so carefully. Richard Holloway was in his 60s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, the kind of man who looked like he'd been born wearing a suit. Victoria was elegant in the way that required serious money and effort, her smile warm but her eyes calculating. Mother, father, Claire said. This is Ethan Vale. Ethan, these are my parents. Richard's handshake was firm enough to be a test. Mr. Vale, Claire tells us you're in automotive repair. I own a shop on the east side, yes, sir. How industrious. Victoria's tone made it sound like an insult wrapped in politeness. And you have a daughter, I understand? Lily, she's 7. How lovely. Another smile that didn't reach her eyes. Claire has always been wonderful with children. Such a maternal instinct. Claire's hand tightened on Ethan's arm. We should find our table. But Richard wasn't done. Perhaps we could have lunch sometime, Mr. Vale. I'd love to hear more about your business. The challenges of the automotive industry, profit margins, that sort of thing. I'd be happy to, Ethan said, knowing a trap when he heard one. They escaped to their assigned table, where several other couples were already seated. Introductions were made, names Ethan immediately forgot, faces that all blurred together in their expensive similarity. The woman next to him, someone's wife, asked what he did. I fix cars, he said, because he was tired of dancing around it. How practical, she said, then turned to talk to someone else. Dinner was 7 courses of food Ethan couldn't identify, served by waiters who moved like ghosts. Claire barely touched hers, her shoulders getting tighter with each speech about philanthropy and social responsibility. When her father took the microphone to thank everyone for their generous donations, Ethan watched Claire's face go carefully blank. The Holloway Foundation has always believed in giving back, Richard said, his voice carrying easily across the room. In using our resources to make a real difference. My daughter Claire has been instrumental in our recent initiatives, and I'm proud to announce that she'll be taking on an even larger role starting next quarter. Claire's jaw tightened. I didn't agree to that. What? Ethan asked. He just volunteered me for something we never discussed. She stood abruptly. Excuse me. Ethan followed her out to the terrace, where the night air was cold enough to make his breath visible. Claire was gripping the railing, her knuckles white. Hey, he said softly. Talk to me. He does this. Makes decisions about my life without asking. Announces them publicly so I can't refuse without making a scene. What did he volunteer you for? Heading up the Foundation's new education initiative. It's a full-time position. It means giving up any pretense of having my own life. She turned to face him. I never wanted this, Ethan. Any of it. I wanted to study music, maybe teach. But that wasn't prestigious enough. Wasn't valuable enough. So tell him no. You don't tell Richard Holloway no. Sure you do. You open your mouth and you say the word no. She laughed, but it sounded broken. You make it sound simple. It is simple. Not easy, but simple. He moved closer. What's he going to do? Disown you? Maybe. Then you come work at the shop. I could use someone who's good with numbers. Ethan, I'm serious. You think I care about your parents' money? I care about you. The person who helps Lily with her homework and laughs at my terrible jokes and looks happy when she's covered in motor oil. That's who I want. Not whatever performance your parents need you to put on. Claire kissed him then, right there on the terrace where anyone could see, and Ethan forgot about the gala and the disapproving stares and everything except the fact that this brilliant, complicated woman had chosen him. When they pulled apart, Victoria was standing in the doorway. Claire, she said, ice in her voice, a word. Claire's mother led them to a private sitting room off the main ballroom. Richard was already there, his expression dark. What exactly, he said, do you think you're doing? I'm living my life, Claire said. You're embarrassing yourself. Embarrassing us. Victoria looked at Ethan like he was something unpleasant she'd found on her shoe. Mr. Vale, I'm sure you're a perfectly nice man, but you must understand this is inappropriate. What's inappropriate about it? Ethan asked. You're not suitable for our daughter. Mother, Claire started. I'm speaking to Mr. Vale. Victoria's voice could have cut glass. You have a child. You work in manual labor. You have no education, no prospects, no understanding of the world Claire comes from. You're right, Ethan said. I don't understand a world where you talk about your daughter like she's a business asset instead of a person. Richard stepped forward. I think it's time for you to leave. He's my guest, Claire said. He's a distraction, one that ends tonight. Richard turned to Ethan. I'll be direct, Mr. Vale. How much? Excuse me? How much money will it take for you to walk away from my daughter? 50,000? 100? Name your price. The room went very quiet. You think you can buy me off? Ethan asked. I think everyone has a price, and I think a man in your financial situation would be foolish to turn down a generous offer. Dad, stop it, Claire said, her voice shaking. How do you know about my financial situation? Ethan asked slowly. Richard smiled. I make it my business to know about people who spend time with my daughter. Your auto shop is 3 months behind on rent. You have a custody lawyer on retainer you can't afford. Your daughter's medical insurance lapsed last year. Should I continue? Ethan felt like he'd been punched. You investigated me. Of course I did. And what I found was a man barely keeping his head above water who sees my daughter as a life raft. That's not true, Claire said. Isn't it? Tell me, Mr. Vale, when exactly were you planning to mention your financial troubles? Before or after you gained access to Claire's trust fund? I don't want her money. Everyone wants money. The only question is how much. Richard pulled out a checkbook. $100,000. Enough to solve your immediate problems and give you some breathing room. All you have to do is leave Claire alone. Ethan looked at the check, at the number written there in Richard's precise handwriting. It would change everything. Would pay off his debts, secure Lily's future, buy him time to turn the shop around. All he had to do was walk away from the best thing that had happened to him in years. No, he said. I'm sorry? I said no. Keep your money. Ethan looked at Claire, who was staring at him with tears in her eyes. I'm not for sale. Then you're a fool. Maybe. But I'm a fool who actually cares about your daughter. Richard's expression hardened. If you don't take this offer, I will make your life very difficult. I have lawyers, Mr. Vale. Good ones. I can tie you up in legal battles that will drain whatever resources you have left. I can make phone calls that will ensure you never get another business loan in this city. And I can make absolutely certain that you lose custody of your daughter. The threat hit like a physical blow. You wouldn't. Try me. A single father with financial instability, working long hours, unable to provide adequate care. I think a judge might have concerns. Dad, stop, Claire said. Please. This is for your own good, Claire. You'll thank me later. I'll never forgive you. You will. Once you're married to someone appropriate, and this unfortunate episode is behind you. Richard turned back to Ethan. Last chance. Take the money and walk away or face the consequences. Ethan thought about Lily, about the custody battle he'd already fought once when her mother tried to take her back. Thought about the lawyer bills and the court dates and the sick feeling of not knowing if he'd get to keep his daughter. Richard Holloway could make all of that happen again, and this time Ethan didn't have the money to fight. I need to think about it, he said, hating himself. You have 24 hours. Richard tucked the checkbook away. I suggest you choose wisely. Ethan left without saying goodbye to Claire. He couldn't look at her, couldn't face the disappointment he knew he'd see. He drove home in the rented tux, returned it to the shop, where the clerk looked at him funny, and sat in his truck in the parking lot trying to figure out how his life had fallen apart so quickly. His phone buzzed. Claire. Please talk to me. He stared at the message, his thumb hovering over the keyboard. Then he turned off his phone and drove home. Lily was asleep when he got there, Mrs. Chen dozing on the couch. He paid her, thanked her, and sat in his daughter's doorway, watching her breathe. She had a stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin, a nightlight shaped like a star throwing shadows across her walls. The drawing she'd made of the three of them was still on her dresser, held up with tape. He couldn't lose her. He couldn't. His phone buzzed again when he turned it back on. More messages from Claire. He deleted them without reading and went to bed, but sleep didn't come. He lay there thinking about Richard's threat, about the custody battle he couldn't afford, about the fact that wanting something good didn't mean you got to keep it. At 3 a.m, he made his decision. The next day, he texted Claire to meet him at their coffee shop. She was already there when he arrived, looking like she hadn't slept either. Ethan, I can't do this, he said. She went very still. What? Your dad's right. I can't give you what you need. I can barely take care of my own kid. This whole thing was a mistake. You don't mean that. I do. The lie tasted like ash. I got caught up in something that was never going to work. You're from a different world, Claire. I can't compete with that. I'm not asking you to compete. I'm asking you to be with me. And what happens when the money runs out? When you get tired of slumming it with the mechanic? When you realize that love doesn't actually pay the bills? That's not fair. None of this is fair, but it's reality. He stood up. I'm sorry. I really am. But this ends now. Ethan, please. Take care of yourself, Claire. He walked out before she could say anything else, before he could see her cry, before he could change his mind and make everything worse. For 3 days, he didn't hear from her. He worked himself into exhaustion, staying at the shop until midnight, taking every job he could get. Lily asked about Claire twice, and both times Ethan said she was busy. The third time, his daughter just looked at him with sad, knowing eyes and stopped asking. On the fourth day, Mrs. Chen knocked on his door holding a newspaper. "You should see this," she said. The society page showed Claire at another event, this time with Marcus what's-his-name, the venture capitalist her parents wanted her to marry. They were smiling for the camera, his hand on her waist, looking like exactly the kind of couple that belonged together. Ethan told himself he'd done the right thing, told himself that keeping Lily safe was all that mattered, told himself that Claire would be fine, would move on, would eventually forget about the mechanic who'd briefly interrupted her carefully planned life. He told himself a lot of things. None of them helped. Then the storm came. It was one of those late spring storms that the weather service got excited about, all tornado warnings and flash flood alerts. Ethan sent his workers home early and was locking up the shop when his phone rang. Unknown number. Vale Auto. "Is this Ethan Vale?" A woman's voice, crisp and professional. "Yeah. This is Elizabeth Chen. I'm calling from Mercy General Hospital. We have a Claire Holloway here, and you're listed as her emergency contact." Ethan's heart stopped. "What happened?" "She was in a car accident. She's stable, but she's asking for you." He was in his truck before the woman finished giving him the room number. The storm was getting worse, rain coming down so hard his wipers couldn't keep up. But he didn't slow down. 20 minutes later, he was running through the emergency room doors, still wearing his work clothes, tracking mud across the clean floors. Claire was in a room on the third floor, sitting up in bed with a bandage on her forehead and her arm in a sling. She looked small and tired, and when she saw him, she started crying. "Hey," he said, rushing to her side. "Hey, it's okay. I'm here." "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't know who else to call." "Don't apologize." "What happened?" "I was driving back from a foundation meeting. The rain was bad and I couldn't see and I ran off the road, hit a tree." She looked at him. "I was upset about us. I wasn't paying attention." Ethan felt guilt crash over him. "Claire, you were right," she said, "about everything. I've been so stupid thinking I could have what I wanted, thinking I could choose my own life. No, I was wrong. I was scared, and I said things I didn't mean. My father threatened you, didn't he? Threatened Lily." Ethan didn't answer, which was answer enough. "I'm not worth it," Claire said. "You should go before you get hurt worse. Stop it. I'm serious. My family will destroy you. They'll take everything you have and they won't even feel bad about it. I don't care. You should care. Lily needs you. And I need you." Ethan took her good hand. "I've spent the last week trying to convince myself that walking away was the right thing, that protecting Lily meant giving you up. But you know what I realized?" "What?" "Lily doesn't just need a father who keeps her safe. She needs a father who shows her it's okay to fight for the people you love, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." "Ethan, I love you, Claire. I should have said it before. I should have fought for you instead of running away." She was full on crying now. "I love you too. But my parents can go to hell." He said it firmly. "I'm done being scared. I'm done letting them control our lives. If they want to fight, they'll get one." "You don't know what you're saying. They'll come after you with everything they have. Then we fight back, together." "How? I don't know yet. But I know I'm not walking away again." He kissed her forehead, carefully avoiding the bandage. "We'll figure it out." A nurse came in to check Claire's vitals, and Ethan stepped out to call Mrs. Chen about Lily. When he came back, Claire was staring out the window at the storm. "I put you as my emergency contact 3 weeks ago," she said. "Took you off everything my parents could see and put you on everything they couldn't. They don't even know I'm here." "Why?" "Because you're the person I wanted. When things went wrong, you're who I wanted to call." She looked at him. "That has to mean something, right?" "It means everything." They kept her overnight for observation. Ethan stayed, sleeping in the chair beside her bed, waking up every time a nurse came in. In the morning, when they released her, he drove her back to her apartment, a place he'd never been before. It was exactly what he expected: tasteful, expensive, impersonal, like a hotel room that someone lived in. "I hate this place," Claire said, looking around. I've lived here for 5 years, and it's never felt like home. Where does feel like home? She looked at him. Your kitchen, with Lily's drawings on the fridge and the chair that squeaks and the way you burn toast every single morning. I don't burn it every morning. You absolutely do. They smiled at each other, and for a moment everything felt possible. Then Claire's phone rang. Her mother. Don't answer it, Ethan said. I have to. If I don't, she'll just keep calling. Claire answered on speaker. Victoria's voice filled the apartment, sharp with concern that sounded more angry than worried. Where have you been? You missed the brunch with the Westfields. Do you have any idea how that looked? I was in the hospital, Mother. A pause. What? Car accident last night. I'm fine. Why didn't you call us? Because I called someone else. Another pause, longer this time. The mechanic. His name is Ethan, and yes, Claire, we've discussed this. That relationship is over. No, it's not. Your father made himself very clear. I don't care what Dad said. I love Ethan, and I'm not giving him up. Victoria's voice went cold. Then you leave us no choice. What's that supposed to mean? You'll find out. Goodbye, Claire. The line went dead. That sounded ominous, Ethan said. Everything with my mother sounds ominous. But Claire looked worried. They found out what Victoria meant 2 days later when Ethan's custody lawyer called. We have a problem, she said. Lily's mother filed for full custody, with support from a very expensive legal team that's definitely not hers. Ethan's blood ran cold. The Holloways. I can't prove that, but the timing is suspicious. The petition claims you're financially unstable and romantically involved with someone from a dangerous background. Claire's not dangerous. They're claiming she's a flight risk, that she has mental health issues, that her relationship with you puts Lily in an unstable environment. The lawyer sighed. Ethan, this is bad. They're going for the throat. Can we fight it? We can try, but you need to understand what we're up against. These lawyers don't lose, and they're not playing fair. After he hung up, Ethan told Claire everything. She listened with growing horror. They're using Lily to get to me, she said. They're using everything they can. We have to stop them. How? Claire looked at him, and he saw something new in her expression. Not fear, determination. By showing them I'm not the person they think I am, that I'm not fragile or unstable or any of the things they've spent my whole life saying I am. She stood up. I need to see my parents, alone. Claire, trust me, please. So he did, even though every instinct told him not to let her face them alone. Claire walked into her parents' house for the first time in 3 weeks, and the silence that greeted her felt like walking into a tomb. The housekeeper, Maria, looked at her with sympathy but said nothing as she led Claire to her father's study. Richard was behind his desk, reading glasses perched on his nose, reviewing documents like this was just another Tuesday. Victoria sat in the leather chair by the window, her posture perfect, her expression unreadable. Claire, her father said without looking up, I was wondering when you'd come. Call off your lawyers, Claire said. Now he looked up. I'm sorry? The custody case, the investigation into Ethan, all of it. Call it off. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. I know you're behind it. Claire moved further into the room. You're paying Lily's mother to file for custody. You're providing her legal team. You're trying to destroy Ethan because you can't control me. Victoria set down her teacup. We're trying to protect you. By threatening a child? By trying to take a little girl away from the only parent who's ever actually wanted her? The child will be fine, Richard said dismissively. Her mother is perfectly capable. Her mother abandoned her 3 years ago and hasn't sent so much as a birthday card since. But sure, she's perfectly capable now that you're paying her. Watch your tone. Or what? You'll disown me? Go ahead. Claire's voice was shaking, but she didn't stop. I'd rather have nothing than live like this, like a prisoner in my own life. Richard stood, and even though Claire was 32 years old, she still felt small in front of him. You think you know what nothing looks like? You think your mechanic boyfriend is showing you the real world? You've never gone without anything in your life, Claire. You have no idea what you're talking about. Then let me find out. Let me make my own mistakes. So you can come crawling back when reality hits? When the money runs out and the romance fades and you're stuck in some tiny apartment wondering where it all went wrong? He shook his head. I won't watch you destroy yourself. You're not protecting me. You're controlling me. There's a difference. This discussion is over. Richard sat back down. You'll end this relationship with Mr. Vale, you'll take the position at the foundation, and you'll stop embarrassing this family. Those are your options. What if I refuse? Then I'll file a petition to have you declared mentally incompetent. The room went still. Claire stared at her father, sure she'd misheard. Excuse me? Your recent behavior suggests an inability to make sound decisions. The car accident, the erratic choices, the clear emotional instability. Richard's voice was calm, almost clinical. I have 3 doctors who will testify that you're not capable of managing your own affairs. I'll be appointed as your conservator, which means every financial decision, every life choice goes through me. You can't do that. I can and I will, unless you end this nonsense now. Claire felt the walls closing in. She thought about the evaluation her mother had insisted she attend last month. The therapist who'd asked all those questions about her mood, her relationships, her ability to function. She'd thought it was Victoria being overprotective. Now she understood it had been groundwork. You've been planning this, she said slowly. For how long? Does it matter? Victoria asked. Darling, we're doing this because we love you. You're not well. Anyone can see that. I'm not sick. You're making irrational choices, pursuing relationships that are clearly harmful, engaging in reckless behavior. Her mother's voice softened, which somehow made it worse. Let us help you. By taking away my freedom? By protecting you from yourself, Richard said. You have 24 hours to make a decision. End the relationship and accept the foundation position, or we move forward with the conservatorship. And trust me, once that's in place, you won't be seeing Mr. Vale or his daughter again. Claire left without another word. She made it to her car before the shaking started, had to sit in the driveway for 10 minutes before she trusted herself to drive. When she finally got back to her apartment, Ethan was waiting outside. How did it go? He asked, then saw her face. That bad? She told him everything. About the conservatorship threat, the doctors her father had lined up, the trap that had been set months ago. Ethan listened with growing fury. That's insane. They can't just declare you incompetent because you're dating someone they don't like. They can try. And with their money and lawyers, they might succeed. Claire's hands were still shaking. I looked it up on the drive over. Conservatorships are supposed to be for people who genuinely can't care for themselves. But the standards are vague enough that with the right doctors and the right arguments, my father could make a case. We'll fight it. How? I can't afford lawyers like his. The money I have access to, he controls. My apartment, my car, even my credit cards. They're all tied to the family trust. She laughed bitterly. I thought I was independent. Turns out I've never made a single financial decision without my father's approval. Ethan was quiet for a moment. What if you walk away from all of it? What? The money, the apartment, all of it. Just walk away. And then what? Live on what exactly? You could stay with me and Lily. It's not much, but it's yours if you want it. Claire looked at him, this man who was offering her his home, even though he could barely afford to keep it. Ethan, I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking, I'm offering. Your custody case. If I move in with you, it'll make everything worse. They'll use it as proof that you're unstable. Then we prove them wrong. He took her hands. Look, I know I'm not thinking this through perfectly. I know there are a million reasons why this is a terrible idea, but I also know that I love you, and I'm not letting your father bully you into giving up your life. He's going to destroy you. He can try, but Richard Holloway didn't just try. He came at them with everything he had. The custody hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks out, and in that time, Ethan watched his life get systematically dismantled. The bank called about his business loan. Suddenly, there were irregularities that needed to be addressed, paperwork that had to be refiled, delays that pushed his funding back indefinitely. 3 of his regular clients canceled their service contracts without explanation. The landlord who'd been flexible about late rent for 2 years suddenly wanted everything paid in full, or he'd start eviction proceedings. Then the social worker showed up. Her name was Patricia Morrison, and she had kind eyes and a clipboard that might as well have been a weapon. She spent 2 hours going through Ethan's house, asking questions about his work schedule, his childcare arrangements, his relationship with Claire. Lily sat in her room the whole time, playing quietly, knowing somehow that this mattered. "Mr. Vale," Patricia said as she was leaving, "I want you to understand that I'm not your enemy. My only concern is Lily's well-being." "I know. But I have to be honest with you. Your financial situation is precarious, you work long hours, and you're in a new relationship with someone who, according to the reports I've received, has significant personal issues. Those reports are lies. Maybe, but I have to investigate them." She glanced back at the house. "Lily seems happy, well-adjusted. You clearly love her, but love isn't always enough." After she left, Ethan sat at his kitchen table with his head in his hands. Claire found him there an hour later, still not moving. "They came to my apartment too," she said quietly. "Different social worker. Asked me about my mental health, my intentions with you, whether I understood the responsibility of being involved with a single parent." "What did you tell them?" "The truth. That I love you, that Lily is an amazing kid, that I've never been more sure of anything in my life." She sat down across from him. "I also told them about my father, about the threats and the conservatorship and the way he's been manipulating all of this." "Did they believe you?" "I don't know. They wrote it all down, anyway." Ethan's phone buzzed. His lawyer. "We have a problem," she said, and Ethan's stomach dropped because those seemed to be the only words anyone said to him anymore. "Lily's mother is claiming you have substance abuse issues. She's submitted medical records showing you were prescribed pain medication 2 years ago after a work injury. I threw my back out lifting an engine block. The doctor gave me Vicodin for a week. I barely took any of it. I know. But she's spinning it as evidence of ongoing drug use. Combined with the financial instability and the relationship concerns, it's building a narrative. A narrative that's complete fiction. Fiction that's well documented and professionally presented. Ethan, I need you to understand what we're facing. The other side has resources we can't match. They can drag this out, file motion after motion, bury us in paperwork and legal fees until you can't afford to fight anymore. So what do I do? You consider settling. Shared custody, maybe. It's not ideal, but it's better than risking a judge who decides Lily's mother can provide a more stable environment. She doesn't want stability. She wants money. My daughter is a paycheck to her. Can you prove that?" Ethan couldn't, and that was the problem. The preliminary hearing was in a courthouse that smelled like old coffee and desperation. Ethan sat at a table with his lawyer while across the aisle, Lily's mother, Jennifer, looked uncomfortable in a suit that probably cost more than Ethan made in a month. Her legal team, 3 of them, looked like they'd stepped out of a law school recruitment poster. The judge was a woman in her 50s named Barbara Chen, no relation to Mrs. Chen from next door, who looked tired before the hearing even started. "This is a preliminary hearing to establish the basic facts of the case," she said. "I'm not making any decisions today beyond scheduling. Let's keep this simple." Simple lasted about 5 minutes. Jennifer's lead attorney, a man named Robert Caldwell, who had the kind of voice that expected to be obeyed, stood up and began painting a picture of Ethan as a neglectful father who worked too much, made too little, and had recently become involved with a woman suffering from mental illness. "Your Honor, we have documentation from 3 separate medical professionals indicating that Ms. Holloway has been diagnosed with severe anxiety, depression, and exhibits signs of borderline personality disorder. Mr. Vale has chosen to bring this individual into his daughter's life with no consideration for the potential harm." "Those are lies," Claire said from where she sat in the gallery. Judge Chen looked at her. "Miss, you're not a party to this case. Please remain silent or I'll have you removed." Claire's mouth snapped shut, but Ethan could see her shaking with anger. His lawyer, Sarah Kim, stood up. "Your Honor, the medical documentation being referenced was obtained through evaluations that Ms. Holloway attended at her mother's request. She was not informed that these evaluations were being conducted with an agenda, and the diagnoses are highly questionable. Do you have evidence of this agenda?" "We're working on obtaining it." "Then come back when you have it." "Mr. Caldwell, continue." Caldwell smiled. "We also have testimony from Mr. Vale's landlord indicating that rent has been paid late or not at all for the past 6 months, from his bank regarding a defaulted business loan, from former clients who have expressed concerns about his ability to complete work on time." Sarah stood again. "Your Honor, My client has been the target of a systematic campaign to destroy his livelihood. The Holloway family, specifically Richard Holloway, has been objection, relevance. Your Honor, it's absolutely relevant. The financial instability being used against my client is the direct result of interference from Ms. Holloway's family, who have made it clear they want this relationship to end. Can you prove this interference? We're gathering evidence. Then gather it and bring it to me at the next hearing. Judge Chen looked at her notes. Here's what I see. A father with legitimate financial struggles and a new relationship with someone who may or may not have mental health issues. A mother who left her child 3 years ago but now wants custody. Neither of you looks great on paper. Your Honor, both lawyers started. I'm not finished. I'm ordering a full psychological evaluation for both parents. I'm also ordering a home study for both residences. We'll reconvene in 30 days with those reports, and then I'll decide whether this case has merit or if we're all wasting the court's time. She banged her gavel. Next case. Outside the courthouse, Claire was waiting. She'd been crying. I'm sorry, she said. I shouldn't have said anything in there. I made it worse. You didn't make anything worse. They already had their narrative. Ethan looked at Sarah. What are our chances? Honestly, not good. The psych evaluation could go either way, but the home study is going to be a problem. Your house is fine, but it's small. 1 bedroom for you, 1 for Lily. No room for growth. Compare that to what Jennifer can offer with the Holloways backing. So I'm supposed to lose my daughter because I'm poor? No. But poverty is a factor judges consider, whether they admit it or not. Sarah touched his arm. I'm not giving up. But you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that we don't win this. After she left, Ethan and Claire sat in his truck in the parking lot. Neither of them spoke for a long time. This is my fault, Claire finally said. Don't. It is. If you'd never met me, then I'd still be broke and struggling, except I'd be doing it alone. At least now I have you. For how long? Once they take Lily, once they prove I'm some kind of unstable mess, what then? Then we fight harder. With what? We're out of money, out of time, out of options? She turned to face him. Maybe we should do what they want. Maybe I should walk away. No. Ethan, no. We're not doing this again. I already walked away once and it nearly killed me. I'm not doing it again. But Lily needs her father. She also needs to see her father fighting for something that matters. He took Claire's hand. We're going to figure this out. How? I don't know yet. The answer came from an unexpected source 3 days later. Ethan was at the shop, working on an oil change that should have taken 20 minutes but was taking 2 hours because he couldn't focus, when a sleek black Mercedes pulled into the lot. A woman got out, mid-40s, wearing a business suit and carrying a briefcase. Mr. Vale? Yeah? My name is Catherine Price. I'm an attorney. Ethan's stomach sank. If you're here from the Holloways, I'm not. I'm here because of Claire. She looked around the shop. Is there somewhere we can talk privately? They went into his office, which was really just a converted storage room with a desk and a filing cabinet. Catherine sat down like she was in a boardroom. I've known Claire since she was 16, she said. I was her piano teacher, back before Richard decided music was a waste of time. We stayed in touch over the years. Not openly, he wouldn't have approved, but she'd call me sometimes. When she needed someone to talk to. Okay. She called me last week, told me what was happening, the custody case, the conservatorship threat, all of it. Catherine opened her briefcase. I did some digging. The doctors who are prepared to testify that Claire is mentally incompetent, 2 of them are on the Holloway Foundation's board. The 3rd received a research grant from Richard last year. None of them have actually treated Claire in any meaningful capacity. Can we use that? In a conservatorship hearing? Absolutely. But here's the thing, Richard hasn't filed yet. He's using it as a threat, which means he might not actually have the evidence to back it up. Conservatorships require a pretty high burden of proof. He'd need to show that Claire is genuinely unable to care for herself, make decisions, manage her affairs. And while he can stack the deck with friendly doctors, a judge might see through it. Might isn't very reassuring. No, it's not. But here's what else I found. She pulled out a folder. Richard Holloway's first attempt to control Claire's life wasn't the conservatorship threat. It was you. Specifically, his offer to pay you to leave. How do you know about that? Because he wrote the check from a business account, and business accounts keep records, records that show a pattern of behavior. This isn't the first time he's paid someone to disappear from Claire's life. Over the past 10 years, I've found 4 other instances. Men Claire was dating, people she was friends with, even a therapist she was seeing who actually seemed to be helping her. He paid them all off. Ethan felt sick. She doesn't know, does she? I don't think so. He's been very careful. Catherine leaned forward. But this is the kind of pattern that could be useful in court. If we can show that Richard has a history of interfering in Claire's life, of paying people to leave, of systematically isolating her, it undermines his claim that he's acting in her best interest. Can we prove it? Some of it. The checks are real. But the people he paid, they all signed NDAs. Getting them to talk would be difficult. But not impossible? Nothing's impossible, just expensive and time-consuming. She paused. Mr. Vale, I'm not going to lie to you. Fighting Richard Holloway is a nightmare. He has unlimited resources and no scruples about how he uses them. But I've also watched him control Claire for 16 years, and I'm tired of it, so I'm offering to represent you, pro bono. Ethan stared at her. Why? Because Claire deserves a chance at her own life, and because Richard Holloway has been getting away with this for too long. Catherine stood. Think about it. Talk to Claire. If you want to fight this, call me. She left her card and walked out. Ethan sat there for a long time, staring at it. That night he told Claire about Catherine's visit. They were at his house, Lily asleep upstairs, the two of them sitting on the couch that sagged in the middle. I know Catherine, Claire said. I didn't know she was a lawyer now. Last I heard she was still teaching. She said you used to call her. When things got bad at home, when I needed someone who wouldn't tell my parents everything I said. Claire looked at the business card. She really found proof? Of my father paying people off? She said so. And she wants to help us? Yeah. Claire was quiet for a moment. If we do this, if we really fight him, it's going to get ugly. He won't hold back. He's already not holding back. It'll get worse. He'll dig up everything he can find on you, every mistake you've ever made, every bad decision, every moment of weakness. He'll use it all. Let him. I've got nothing to hide. Everyone has something to hide. Ethan thought about the nights after Jennifer left, when he'd sat in Lily's room and cried while she slept. Thought about the times he'd gone without eating so she could have enough. Thought about the moments when he'd wanted to give up, when being a single father felt impossible and he'd wondered if she'd be better off with someone else. Maybe, he said, but whatever he finds, it won't change the fact that I love my daughter and I'm not giving her up. And it won't change the fact that I love you. Claire kissed him, soft and sad and determined all at once. Okay, let's fight. They called Catherine the next morning. She came to the house that afternoon with another lawyer, a younger man named David Park, who specialized in family law. Here's the situation, Catherine said, spreading documents across Ethan's kitchen table. We're fighting 2 battles, the custody case and the potential conservatorship. They're connected, but they'll be heard separately. For the custody case, we need to prove that Ethan is a fit parent and that Jennifer's sudden interest is financially motivated. For the conservatorship, we need to prove that Claire is perfectly capable of managing her own life, and that Richard's concern is about control, not care. How do we do that? Claire asked. For the conservatorship, we'd need you to undergo an independent psychological evaluation, not from one of your father's doctors, but from someone court-appointed who has no connection to your family. And if they find something wrong with me, then we deal with it. But Claire, I've known you for 16 years. You're not mentally incompetent. You're depressed, maybe, anxious. But that's not the same thing as being unable to care for yourself. David spoke up. For the custody case, we build a counter-narrative. We show that Ethan has been Lily's primary caregiver for 3 years, that Jennifer abandoned her daughter and only came back when someone started writing checks. We get testimony from teachers, neighbors, anyone who can speak to Ethan's parenting. The Holloways will have their own witnesses, Ethan said. Probably. But we have something they don't, the truth. And sometimes that actually matters. They spent 3 hours going over strategy, evidence, potential witnesses. By the time Catherine and David left, Ethan's head was spinning. This could actually work, Claire said, sounding surprised. Could. It's better than nothing. That night, Ethan got Lily ready for bed. She was quieter than usual, had been for days. "Bug, you okay?" he asked as he tucked her in. "Is Mommy really coming back?" His heart broke a little. "I don't know, Lily. I don't want her to." "Why not?" "Because she left. She didn't want me before. Why does she want me now?" Ethan had no good answer for that. Sometimes grown-ups make decisions that don't make sense, that hurt people without meaning to. Like you and Claire? What about me and Claire? Mrs. Chen says Claire's family doesn't like you, that they're trying to make you break up. Ethan made a mental note to talk to Mrs. Chen about what she said in front of his daughter. "Yeah, that's true. But you're not going to, right? Break up?" "Not if I can help it." "Good. Because I like her. And you're happier when she's here." Lily played with her stuffed rabbit. "If Mommy comes back, will you still be happy?" "Hey, look at me." Ethan waited until she met his eyes. "Whatever happens with your mom, whatever the judge decides, you're my daughter. That's never going to change. And yeah, things are hard right now, but we're going to get through this. Together. Promise?" "Promise." She fell asleep holding his hand, and Ethan sat there in the dark thinking about all the promises he'd made over the years and how terrified he was that this might be one he couldn't keep. The psychological evaluation for Claire was scheduled first. She met with Dr. Sarah Brennan, a court-appointed psychiatrist who spent 3 hours asking questions about Claire's childhood, her relationships, her mental health history. Claire came out looking exhausted. "How did it go?" Ethan asked. "I have no idea. She was completely neutral. I couldn't tell if she thought I was fine or completely insane." They got the report a week later. Dr. Brennan had found Claire to be emotionally healthy, capable of making her own decisions, and showing no signs of the disorders Richard's doctors had claimed. She did note symptoms of anxiety and past trauma, but concluded these were the result of a controlling family environment rather than inherent mental illness. "It's not enough to block the conservatorship entirely," Catherine said, "but it's a good start. If Richard does file, we have evidence that contradicts his narrative." The home study for the custody case came next. A different social worker, this time a man named James Chen, who actually smiled when he met Lily. He spent 2 hours at Ethan's house, then another 2 at Jennifer's new apartment, which Ethan knew he couldn't afford to even dream about. When the report came back, it was mixed. Ethan's home was deemed adequate but small. His work hours were concerning. His relationship with Claire was noted as stable but recent. Jennifer's home was larger, her financial situation more secure, her support system more established. The recommendation was for shared custody, with Jennifer as the primary guardian. "We can fight this," Sarah Kim said. "The judge doesn't have to accept the recommendation." "But she probably will," Ethan said flatly. "Not necessarily, especially if we can prove the financial support is coming from the Holloways and that this is all orchestrated." That proof came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Chen, Ethan's neighbor, had been friends with Jennifer years ago, back before she left. She'd also been paying attention to the cars that had been showing up at Jennifer's new apartment. "I recognized one of them," she told Ethan. "Richard Holloway's driver. I used to work for a catering company that did events at their house. I'd know that car anywhere." "Can you testify to that?" "If you need me to." They had her deposition taken, along with testimony from Lily's teacher about how engaged Ethan was, from his shop employees about his character, from the parents of Lily's friends about the play dates and birthday parties and normal childhood he'd worked so hard to give her. Meanwhile, Richard filed the conservatorship petition. The hearing was scheduled for the same week as the custody trial, and Ethan could see the strategy: overwhelm them, make them fight on 2 fronts, stretch their resources until something broke. But Catherine had a strategy too. "We're going to expose him," she said. "All of it. The payments, the manipulation, the pattern of control. We're going to show the judge exactly who Richard Holloway is." "And if it backfires," Claire asked, "then we lose. But if we don't try, we lose anyway." The night before the conservatorship hearing, Ethan couldn't sleep. He got up, found Claire sitting at his kitchen table with her laptop, surrounded by papers. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Looking through my life, trying to find evidence that I'm competent." She laughed, but it sounded broken. "It's pathetic. I'm 32 years old and I can't prove I can take care of myself." "That's not true, isn't it? I've never paid my own rent, never bought my own car, never made a major decision without my father's input. What kind of adult is that?" the kind who was never allowed to be one. Ethan sat down beside her. But you're learning. You left the foundation. You're here, fighting for what you want. That counts for something. Does it? She looked at him with tears in her eyes. What if the judge doesn't think so? What if they decide my father's right and I need someone to make decisions for me? Then we appeal. And we keep fighting until someone listens. I'm scared. Me too. They sat there in the dark, holding hands across the table, two people who'd found each other by accident and were now fighting to stay together against impossible odds. And in the morning, they would walk into that courthouse and find out if love and truth were enough to beat money and power. Ethan wasn't sure, but he knew they were going to try. The conservatorship hearing started at 9 in the morning in a courtroom that felt too small for what was about to happen. Judge Margaret Reeves presided, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and eyes that had seen too many family tragedies to be easily fooled. Claire sat at the defendant's table with Catherine, while Richard and Victoria occupied the other side with their team of 3 lawyers led by a man named Gregory Harrison, who looked like he billed by the minute. Ethan sat in the gallery behind Claire, close enough to touch her shoulder when she needed it. He'd wanted to hold her hand, but Catherine said it would look bad, like Claire couldn't face this without support, which was exactly what Richard wanted to prove. Mr. Harrison, Judge Reeves said, your petition claims that Ms. Holloway is unable to manage her own affairs due to mental incapacity. Present your evidence. Harrison stood, and for the next hour he painted a picture of Claire that Ethan barely recognized. A woman who'd never held a job outside her family's foundation, who'd never managed her own finances, who'd been in and out of therapy since she was 16. He brought up the car accident, framing it as evidence of reckless behavior and poor judgment. He presented testimony from Dr. Marcus Webb, one of Richard's board members, who'd evaluated Claire and found her to be severely depressed with poor impulse control. Dr. Webb, Harrison said, in your professional opinion, is Ms. Holloway capable of making sound decisions regarding her own welfare? I have serious concerns, Webb said smoothly. Her recent choices suggest someone in crisis. The relationship with an inappropriate partner, the rejection of family support, the accident. These are all red flags that indicate someone who needs help. And in your opinion, would a conservatorship be beneficial? I believe it would be essential. Ms. Holloway needs structure and guidance to prevent further harm to herself. Catherine cross-examined, and she was good. She got Webb to admit he'd only met with Claire twice, that both sessions had been arranged by her mother, that he'd never treated her for any ongoing condition. She got him to acknowledge that being in a relationship Richard disapproved of wasn't a symptom of mental illness. Dr. Webb, Catherine said, you sit on the board of the Holloway Foundation, correct? I do. And that board position comes with compensation? A modest stipend, yes. How modest? $50,000 a year? 100? Webb shifted. I believe it's around $75,000 annually. So you have a financial relationship with the man who's asking you to declare his daughter incompetent. My medical opinion is not influenced by, I'm sure it's not. No further questions. The next witness was Claire's mother. Victoria took the stand looking elegant and tragic, the perfect picture of a concerned parent. Mrs. Holloway, Harrison said gently, can you describe your daughter's behavior over the past 6 months? It's been very worrying. Claire has always been sensitive, but lately she's been different, withdrawn, making choices that seem designed to hurt herself. Victoria's voice broke perfectly. We've tried to help her, but she pushes us away. The accident was our breaking point. We realized she couldn't keep going like this. Can you give specific examples of concerning behavior? She quit her position at the foundation without notice. She became involved with a man she barely knows, someone completely unsuitable. She stopped attending family functions. She's cut herself off from her support system. Victoria looked at the judge. I'm afraid for her, Your Honor. I'm afraid she's going to seriously hurt herself, and will have failed her as parents. It was a masterful performance. Even Ethan, who knew it was bullshit, felt a flicker of doubt. What if they were right? What if Claire really was making bad decisions, and he was just too close to see it? Then Catherine stood up for cross-examination, and the temperature in the room dropped about 10 degrees. Mrs. Holloway, when did Claire last attend therapy? I'm not sure of the exact date. Let me help you. According to the records we've obtained, Claire's last therapy session was 4 years ago. with Dr. Patricia Morrison, a therapist she chose herself, a therapist who, according to her notes, was helping Claire establish healthy boundaries with her family. Do you remember what happened to Dr. Morrison? Victoria's composure cracked slightly. I don't recall. Let me refresh your memory. Your husband paid Dr. Morrison $50,000 to terminate Claire as a patient and sign a non-disclosure agreement. Do you remember that? Objection, Harrison said. Relevance. Your Honor, this goes directly to the pattern of control the petitioner has exercised over Ms. Holloway's life. If he's willing to pay off her therapist, what else has he done to isolate her? I'll allow it. Mrs. Holloway, answer the question. Victoria looked at her husband, then back at Catherine. Dr. Morrison felt she could no longer help Claire. Richard simply facilitated the transition. By paying her to leave? By ensuring Claire could find better care. Care that you approved of. Care that was appropriate. Catherine pulled out a document. Mrs. Holloway, I have bank records showing 4 other payments made by your husband over the past 10 years. Each one to someone who was in Claire's life. Friends, boyfriends, a music teacher. He paid them all to disappear. Did you know about this? Victoria's silence was answer enough. Your Honor, Catherine said, this isn't about protecting Claire. This is about controlling her. And when she finally found the courage to make her own choices, her parents decided to have her declared incompetent rather than let her go. Harrison objected again, but Judge Reeves looked interested. Mr. Harrison, do you have a response to these allegations? Your Honor, Mr. Holloway's personal financial decisions are not relevant to his daughter's mental capacity. I disagree. Continue, Ms. Price. Catherine called her next witness. Dr. Sarah Brennan, the court-appointed psychiatrist who'd evaluated Claire, took the stand and systematically dismantled every claim Richard's doctors had made. Claire was not incompetent. She was not incapable of making decisions. She showed signs of anxiety and past emotional trauma, but those were normal responses to an abnormal situation. In your professional opinion, Catherine asked, does Ms. Holloway need a conservator? Absolutely not. She needs therapy, possibly, to process her family dynamics. But she's a fully functioning adult who's more than capable of managing her own life. Thank you, Dr. Brennan. Then it was Claire's turn. She walked to the witness stand looking small but steady. And Ethan wanted to run up there and take her place. Watching her face this alone was harder than facing it himself. Catherine started with easy questions. Claire's education, her work at the foundation, her daily life. Then she got to the harder stuff. Claire, why did you leave the foundation? Because I didn't want to be there anymore. I'd spent 15 years doing work I didn't choose, making decisions that weren't really mine. I wanted something different. What did you want? I don't know yet. That's the whole point. I wanted the freedom to figure it out. Your parents claim you're not capable of making good decisions. What do you say to that? Claire looked at her father. I say they're wrong. I've made mistakes, sure. But they're my mistakes to make. And honestly, staying in that life, pretending to be who they needed me to be, that was the biggest mistake of all. Harrison took over for cross-examination, and he went straight for the throat. Ms. Holloway, you claim you want independence, but you're currently living in an apartment your father pays for, driving a car registered in your mother's name, using credit cards tied to the family trust. Is that independence? No, that's why I'm planning to change it. Planning? But you haven't actually done it yet, have you? It's not that simple. It is simple. You cancel the cards, you move out, you get a job. Unless you can't do those things without help. I can do them. I just need time. You've had 32 years. How much more time do you need? Claire's hands were shaking. I've spent my entire life being told what to do, what to think, who to be. Breaking away from that isn't something that happens overnight. Or maybe, Harrison said, you're not capable of breaking away at all. Maybe your parents are right and you need guidance. That's not true. Then prove it. Tell the court about your relationship with Mr. Vale. How long have you known him? About 3 months. 3 months? And you're already discussing moving in together? We're discussing possibilities, yes. Does that seem like sound judgment to you? Moving in with a man you barely know, who has significant financial problems and a custody battle? I love him. Love. Harrison made it sound like a disease. Ms. Holloway, with all due respect, you've been isolated your entire life. How do you know what love is? How do you know you're not just grasping at the first person who showed you attention? Claire's voice was barely a whisper. Because he's the only person who's ever let me be myself. Or because he sees an opportunity. A wealthy woman, emotionally vulnerable, desperate for connection. That must look very attractive to someone in his situation. Objection, Catherine said. Mr. Harrison is testifying, not questioning. Sustained. Mr. Harrison, ask questions or sit down. But the damage was done. Ethan could see it in the way Claire's shoulders slumped, the way doubt crept into her eyes. Harrison had planted the seed, and it was growing. The hearing broke for lunch. Ethan found Claire in a small conference room, Catherine and David Park with her. You did great, Catherine said, but Claire wasn't listening. He's right, she said. About the apartment, the car, all of it. I talk about wanting independence, but I haven't actually done anything. You've done everything you can, Ethan said. You can't change your whole life overnight. Why not? Other people do. You did. When Jennifer left, you figured it out. I barely figured it out. I'm still barely figuring it out. But you're doing it. You're standing on your own. She looked at him. I'm 32 and I've never paid a bill in my life. What kind of person doesn't know how to pay a bill? The kind whose parents never let them learn, Catherine said firmly. Claire, listen to me. What Harrison did in there, that's his job. He's trying to make you doubt yourself because if you doubt yourself, the judge will too. Don't let him win. But what if he's right? What if I'm not capable? Stop, you are capable. You're scared, which is normal. But scared and incapable are not the same thing. They went back in after lunch. Richard took the stand, and watching him perform was like watching a masterclass in manipulation. He was the concerned father, heartbroken that his daughter wouldn't accept his help. He talked about Claire's childhood, how sensitive she'd been, how they'd always had to be careful with her. He made it sound like she'd been fragile her whole life, like she'd never been able to handle the real world. Catherine's cross-examination was brutal. Mr. Holloway, you've paid 5 different people over the past 10 years to leave your daughter's life. Why? I was protecting her from people who would hurt her. Did you ask Claire if she wanted to be protected? She was too vulnerable to see the truth. Or you were too controlling to let her make her own choices. Catherine pulled out more documents. You paid Dr. Patricia Morrison, a licensed therapist, $50,000 to stop treating your daughter. Why? Dr. Morrison was encouraging Claire to distance herself from her family. That's not therapy, that's manipulation. Or it was healthy boundary setting that you didn't like. Catherine looked at the judge. Your Honor, I'd like to submit evidence of Mr. Holloway's pattern of interference. 5 payments to 5 different people, all made shortly after they became important to Claire. This isn't protection. This is control. Objection, Harrison said. This is a character assassination, not relevant testimony. It's absolutely relevant, Catherine shot back. The petitioner claims he's acting in his daughter's best interest, but his history shows he's willing to pay anyone who threatens his control over her. That's not love. That's possession. Judge Reeves looked at the documents. I'll allow the evidence. Mr. Holloway, did you offer Mr. Vale money to leave your daughter? Richard's jaw tightened. I did. How much? $100,000. And when he refused, you initiated a custody battle against him using his ex-wife as a proxy. Is that correct? I don't know what you're talking about. Your Honor, Catherine said, producing another document. We have bank records showing a payment from Holloway Industries to Jennifer Vale for $50,000, dated 2 days before she filed for custody. We also have records showing that her legal team is being paid through a shell company that traces back to Mr. Holloway. The courtroom went silent. Even Harrison looked surprised. Mr. Holloway, the judge said coldly, did you pay your daughter's boyfriend's ex-wife to file for custody of his child? I ensured that a mother who wanted to reconnect with her daughter had the resources to do so. By using a child as a weapon against a man who refused to take your money? I was protecting Claire. You were punishing Mr. Vale, and using his daughter to do it. Judge Reeves looked disgusted. Ms. Price, do you have any other witnesses? Just one, Your Honor. I'd like to call Ethan Vale to the stand. Ethan's heart stopped. This wasn't part of the plan. Catherine caught his eye and gave a small nod, and he realized she was improvising. He stood and walked to the witness stand, his legs feeling like they might give out. Mr. Vale, Catherine said, how long have you known Claire Holloway? About 3 months. And in that time, have you ever seen her exhibit behavior that suggested she couldn't care for herself? No, the opposite, actually. Can you explain? Ethan looked at Claire, then at Richard. When I met Claire, she was scared. Not because she was incompetent, but because she'd spent her whole life being told she was. Her parents have convinced her that she can't survive without them. But in the past 3 months, I've watched her start to figure out who she is. She's not perfect at it. She makes mistakes. But that's what people do when they're learning. Do you believe Claire needs a conservator? No. I think she needs what everyone needs: time, support, and the freedom to fail sometimes. Her parents want to protect her from failure, but failure is how you learn. Harrison stood for cross-examination. Mr. Vale, you're in love with Ms. Holloway, correct? Yes. And you're aware that she comes from significant wealth? I'm aware. Doesn't it seem convenient? A struggling mechanic, drowning in debt, suddenly in a relationship with an heiress? If I wanted her money, I would have taken Richard's check when he offered it. Or maybe you're playing a longer game. Wait for the conservatorship to fail, marry her, then have access to everything. I don't want access to everything. I want her. So you say. But let's be honest, Mr. Vale. You're barely keeping your business afloat. You're facing a custody battle you can't afford to fight. Ms. Holloway represents a solution to all your problems. She represents someone I love. That's it. Love. Harrison said it the same way he had with Claire, like it was naive. You've been divorced, correct? My ex-wife and I were never married. But you were in a relationship that failed. How do you know this one won't fail too? I don't. Nobody knows that. But I'm willing to try. Even if it means putting your daughter at risk? Because let's be clear, Mr. Vale, your relationship with Miss Holloway is directly connected to your custody battle. If you end this relationship, I imagine the case against you would disappear. Ethan looked at Richard. Is that an offer? Harrison glanced at his client. It could be. Then the answer is no. I'm not trading the woman I love for my daughter's safety. We're going to win this the right way. And if you lose? Then I lose. But I won't lose because I gave up. Harrison sat down, and Ethan returned to the gallery. Claire was crying quietly, and when he sat beside her, she grabbed his hand and didn't let go. The judge called for closing arguments. Harrison went first, reiterating all the reasons Claire needed a conservator: her financial dependence, her lack of real-world experience, her impulsive decisions. He made it sound reasonable, almost compassionate. Then Catherine stood up. Your Honor, this case isn't about Claire Holloway's competence. It's about her father's need for control. Every piece of evidence the petitioner has presented can be explained by one simple fact. Claire has never been allowed to be independent. She can't manage money because her father never let her try. She doesn't have work experience outside the foundation because he never permitted it. She's dependent on her family because they've systematically prevented her from being anything else. Catherine walked toward the bench. The petitioner wants you to believe that this dependence proves incompetence. But it doesn't. It proves effective control. Richard Holloway has spent 32 years making sure his daughter needs him. And now that she's trying to break free, he's asking you to legally enforce that control forever. But the law requires, Harrison started, the law requires evidence of genuine incapacity. Depression isn't incapacity. Anxiety isn't incapacity. Making choices your parents don't approve of definitely isn't incapacity. Catherine looked at Claire. My client is scared. She's learning. She's making mistakes. But she's also an adult who deserves the right to live her own life, even if she makes a mess of it. That's what freedom looks like. It's not pretty, it's not perfect, but it's hers. Judge Reeves looked at her notes for a long time. Then she looked at Richard. Mr. Holloway, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I want a direct answer. If this conservatorship is approved, what decisions would you make for your daughter? Richard stood. I would ensure she has proper medical care. I would manage her finances to prevent exploitation. Would you allow her to continue her relationship with Mr. Vale? No, that relationship is harmful to her well-being. Based on what evidence? Based on my knowledge of my daughter? Or based on your disapproval? The judge closed her folder. Mr. Holloway, I've been doing this job for 23 years. I've seen real cases of incapacity. People who can't remember their own names, who can't feed themselves, who genuinely need help with every aspect of their lives. Your daughter is not one of those people. Your Honor, I'm not finished. What your daughter is controlled. She's been controlled her entire life to the point where she doesn't trust her own judgment. But that's not a medical condition. That's emotional abuse. Richard's face went red. I have never abused my daughter. You've paid 5 people to leave her life. You're currently using a 7-year-old child as a weapon against a man who refused your money. You've orchestrated this entire hearing because your daughter dared to make a choice you didn't approve. What would you call that? Protection. I'd call it something else. Judge Reeves looked at Claire. Ms. Holloway, I'm denying the petition for conservatorship. You are a competent adult, and you have every right to make your own decisions. Good ones, bad ones, all of them. That's what being an adult means. Claire started crying for real now, and Ethan put his arm around her. However, the judge continued, I'm also going to strongly recommend that you begin working with a therapist to establish true independence. Not because you need a conservator, but because you deserve support as you build a life that's actually yours. Thank you, Claire whispered. Mr. Holloway, I'm appalled by your behavior in this matter. Using a child as leverage, paying people to disappear from your daughter's life, filing a baseless conservatorship petition. These are not the actions of a concerned parent. These are the actions of someone who sees his daughter as property. And if you continue down this path, I will not hesitate to issue restraining orders. Do you understand? Richard's jaw was tight. Yes, Your Honor. Good. We're adjourned. The gavel came down, and it was over. Outside the courthouse, Claire couldn't stop shaking. Catherine and David congratulated her, told her she'd been brave, but Claire barely heard them. She was staring at the building like she couldn't believe what had just happened. I won, she said. You won, Ethan confirmed. I actually won. Against Richard Holloway. I'm honestly impressed. Claire started laughing, and then she was crying again. And then she was in Ethan's arms, and he was holding her while she fell apart in the best possible way. What now? She asked. Now we deal with the custody case, and we figure out what your life looks like when you're actually free to choose it. I'm terrified. Me too. Good. She pulled back and looked at him. Let's be terrified together. The custody hearing was scheduled for the following week, and Ethan knew it would be harder than the conservatorship case. But watching Claire stand up to her father, watching her find her voice and use it, gave him something he hadn't had in weeks. Hope. And sometimes, hope was enough to keep fighting. The custody hearing was set for Thursday morning, and Ethan spent the 3 days in between trying to prepare for every possible outcome while knowing none of his preparation would actually matter. Sarah Kim had warned him that Judge Chen would probably split custody down the middle, give Jennifer weekends and holidays, slowly transition Lily into a life that included a mother who'd walked away from her. The best they could hope for was that Ethan remained the primary guardian. On Wednesday night, Claire helped him clean the house, even though it was already clean, both of them finding things to organize because sitting still felt impossible. Lily was at Mrs. Chen's for a sleepover, which meant the house felt too quiet and too full at the same time. I keep thinking about what the judge said, Claire said, folding dish towels that didn't need folding. About how I deserve to make my own mistakes. Yeah? I've been thinking about it wrong this whole time. I thought freedom meant knowing what to do, having all the answers, but maybe it just means being allowed to figure it out as you go. Ethan set down the glass he was washing. You're going to be fine, Claire. I'm going to be a disaster for a while. I don't know how to do anything. So you'll learn. That's what people do. She smiled, but it was sad. What if tomorrow doesn't go our way? What if they give Jennifer custody? Then we appeal. And if that doesn't work, we figure out how to co-parent with someone who doesn't actually want to parent. That's not a plan. No, it's reality. Sometimes you don't get a plan. You just get what happens and you deal with it. He dried his hands and pulled her close. But whatever happens, we deal with it together. That's the only part I'm sure about. Thursday morning came too fast. Ethan put on the same suit he'd worn to the conservatorship hearing, the one that still didn't quite fit right, and met Sarah Kim at the courthouse. Claire was already there, sitting in the hallway with Catherine, and when Ethan sat down beside her, she grabbed his hand like it was the only thing keeping her anchored. Jennifer's team tried to settle this morning, Sarah said quietly. They offered shared custody with her as primary guardian. Weekends and summers for you. No, Ethan said immediately. I told them that. But Ethan, if we go in there and lose, the judge could give her even more. You need to consider, I'm not negotiating my daughter's life away. We're going to trial. Sarah nodded, but she looked worried. Catherine, on the other hand, looked calm in that way lawyers did when they had something up their sleeve. Judge Barbara Chen called the courtroom to order, and they filed in. Jennifer sat with her legal team, wearing a dress that probably cost more than Ethan made in a month, looking nervous in a way that might have been genuine or might have been coached. It was hard to tell anymore. Robert Caldwell stood for the opening statement, and he went straight for the emotional jugular. He painted Jennifer as a woman who'd made a terrible mistake, who'd struggled with postpartum depression and hadn't known how to cope, who'd left not because she didn't love Lily, but because she'd thought her daughter would be better off without her. And now, after years of therapy and growth, she wanted to be a mother again. Ms. Vale has spent 3 years getting healthy, Caldwell said. She's stable now, employed, living in a safe home. She's ready to give Lily the life she deserves. A life with 2 parents, with financial security, with opportunities Mr. Vale simply cannot provide. Sarah Kim's opening was shorter and harder. Your Honor, Jennifer Vale abandoned her 4-year-old daughter without warning and hasn't contacted her once in 3 years. Not a phone call, not a letter, not a birthday card. And now, suspiciously close to when Mr. Vale became involved with someone from a wealthy family, she suddenly wants custody. This isn't about maternal instinct. This is about money. Objection, Caldwell said. Speculation. We'll prove it, Sarah shot back. The first witness was Jennifer herself. She took the stand looking fragile, and Caldwell walked her through her story with the gentleness of someone handling glass. She talked about the depression, the feeling of drowning, the day she'd left because she'd convinced herself Lily would be better off without a mother who couldn't function. She cried at the right moments, said all the right things about regret and therapy and wanting a second chance. Ms. Vale, Caldwell said, why are you seeking custody now? Because I'm ready. I've done the work. I've gotten help. And I miss my daughter every single day. She looked at the judge. I know I made a terrible mistake, but I love Lily. I've always loved her. I just didn't know how to be what she needed. Now I do. Sarah's cross-examination was surgical. Ms. Vale, you said you've missed your daughter every day for 3 years? Yes. But you never called her? I didn't think I had the right. You never sent a letter? An email? A birthday card? I was ashamed. Too ashamed to send a birthday card to a child you claim to love? Jennifer's composure cracked. I was sick. I wasn't thinking clearly. For 3 years? You weren't thinking clearly for 3 entire years? It took time to get better. And yet, according to your medical records, you were released from therapy 18 months ago with a clean bill of health. That's a 1.5 years where you were better, but still didn't contact your daughter. Why? I was afraid. Of what? Of being rejected, of Lily not wanting me. Or maybe, Sarah said, you just didn't care until someone made it worth your while financially. That's not true, isn't it? Let's talk about your employment. You work as a consultant for Meridian Strategic Group, correct? Yes. And how did you get that job? I applied like anyone else. Did you know that Meridian Strategic Group's largest client is Holloway Industries? Jennifer went pale. I don't think that's relevant. I think it's very relevant. I think Richard Holloway got you that job, just like he's paying your legal fees, just like he gave you $50,000 2 days before you filed for custody. Sarah held up bank statements. Do you deny receiving this payment? It was a loan with no repayment terms, no interest, no paperwork beyond a simple deposit. That's not a loan, Ms. Vale. That's a payment. Caldwell objected, but Judge Chen waved him off. I want to hear this. Ms. Vale, did Richard Holloway pay you to file for custody? He offered to help me reconnect with my daughter. By paying you and providing lawyers and getting you a job. That's not help. That's a transaction. The judge looked disgusted. Continue, Ms. Kim. Sarah didn't let up. When did you first contact Mr. Holloway about custody? I didn't contact him. He contacted me. When? About 2 months ago. 2 months ago, right around when Ethan Vale and Claire Holloway became serious. Interesting timing. He said he was worried about Lily, about the environment she was in. The environment where she's been thriving for 3 years without you? Sarah walked back to her table. Ms. Vale, do you know Lily's favorite color? Jennifer blinked. What? Simple question. What's your daughter's favorite color? Pink? It's purple. What's her favorite food? I don't see how. You don't know, do you? You don't know what she likes to eat, what she likes to read, what she's afraid of. You don't know her at all. I want to know her. That's why I'm here. No, you're here because Richard Holloway paid you to be. No further questions. The damage was done. Jennifer left the stand looking shell-shocked, and Ethan saw several jurors. No, this was a bench trial, just the judge. But Judge Chen looked at Jennifer like she was something distasteful. Sarah called Ethan to the stand next. He told the truth, plain and simple. About the day Jennifer left, about the years of raising Lily alone, about the bills and the late nights, and the constant fear that he was failing at the most important job he'd ever have. He didn't try to make himself sound better than he was. He just told it like it happened. Mr. Vale, Sarah asked, why do you think Jennifer is really here? Because someone paid her to be. She doesn't want Lily. She wants whatever Richard Holloway promised her. Caldwell's cross-examination tried to paint Ethan as bitter and biased, but it didn't stick. The facts were too clear. Jennifer had taken money from Claire's father. The timing was too convenient. And most damning of all, she couldn't answer basic questions about her own daughter. Then Sarah called a surprise witness, Mrs. Chen, Ethan's neighbor. The elderly woman took the stand wearing her best dress and looking nervous but determined. Mrs. Chen, Sarah said, how long have you known the Vale family? 5 years, since before Jennifer left. Did you witness Jennifer's parenting before she left? Yes, she struggled. Ethan worked long hours and Jennifer was often alone with Lily. I could hear the baby crying through the walls sometimes. I offered to help, but Jennifer always said no. Did you see Jennifer after she left? Once, about 6 months ago. She came to the neighborhood asking questions about Ethan and Lily. She didn't know I saw her. What was she doing? Taking pictures of the house, of Ethan's truck. Like she was gathering information. Did she try to contact Lily? No, she waited until Ethan took Lily to school, then left. If Jennifer really wanted to reconnect with her daughter, why would she sneak around instead of just knocking on the door? Objection, Caldwell said. Calls for speculation. I'll rephrase. Mrs. Chen, in your observation, did Jennifer Vale seem like a woman who missed her daughter? No, she seemed like someone on an assignment. The courtroom stirred. Judge Chen looked at Jennifer's table with open suspicion. Mrs. Chen, Sarah continued, you've watched Ethan raise Lily for 3 years. In your opinion, is he a good father? He's an excellent father. He works too hard, worries too much, and barely sleeps. But that little girl is loved. She's happy. She has a life. That's more than a lot of kids get. Thank you. No further questions. Caldwell tried to undermine Mrs. Chen's testimony, suggesting she was biased because she babysat for Ethan, but the old woman didn't budge. She'd seen what she'd seen, and she wasn't going to pretend otherwise. The final witness was the one that changed everything. Catherine Price stood up and called Richard Holloway to the stand. Caldwell objected immediately. Your Honor, Mr. Holloway is not a party to this case. He's a material witness, Catherine said. He's been funding this entire case. He's paid the petitioner, employed her, and orchestrated this custody battle. That makes him relevant. This is highly irregular. So is using a child as a weapon. I'd say that's more irregular. Catherine looked at the judge. Your Honor, please. Judge Chen considered. I'll allow it. Mr. Holloway, take the stand. Richard walked up looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Catherine didn't waste time. Mr. Holloway, did you pay Jennifer Vale $50,000? I provided financial assistance to help her get back on her feet. So you could use her to hurt Ethan Vale. I was concerned about my daughter's safety. Your daughter is 32 years old and perfectly capable of making her own relationship choices. This isn't about safety. This is about control. Catherine pulled out a document. Mr. Holloway, 2 weeks ago you lost a conservatorship case against Claire. The judge found that you'd been controlling her entire life. Is this custody battle your way of continuing that control? That's absurd, is it? You can't control Claire anymore, so you're going after the man she loves by threatening his daughter. That sounds like control to me. I'm protecting my family. By destroying someone else's? Mr. Holloway, do you care at all about Lily Vale's well-being? Of course I do. Then why are you trying to give her to a mother who abandoned her? A mother who doesn't know her favorite color or her favorite food or anything about her? Does that sound like protecting a child? Richard's jaw tightened. Sometimes children need to be with their mothers. Even mothers who don't want them? Even mothers you had to pay to come back? Catherine moved closer. Mr. Holloway, what did you promise Jennifer if she wins custody? I don't know what you're talking about. Really? Because I have testimony from someone in your organization that says you promised Jennifer Vale an additional $200,000 and a permanent position at one of your companies if she wins this case. Is that true? The courtroom went silent. Your Honor, Caldwell said, I object to this entire line of questioning. Quiet. Judge Chen looked at Richard. Mr. Holloway, answer the question. I offered to help Jennifer provide for Lily. That's not what I asked. Did you promise her money if she wins? Richard's silence was answer enough. Judge Chen sat back in her chair. Let me make sure I understand this. You paid Ms. Vale to file for custody. You're paying her legal fees. You got her a job. And you've promised her additional money if she wins. All because you don't approve of your adult daughter's boyfriend? I'm protecting my daughter from making a terrible mistake. By using a 7-year-old child as leverage? Mr. Holloway, I've seen a lot of ugly custody battles in my career, but this might be the ugliest. You've turned a child into a bargaining chip, paid her mother to pretend she wants her back, and attempted to destroy a man's life because he had the audacity to fall in love with someone you don't approve of. Do I have that right? You're oversimplifying. I don't think I am. Step down. Richard left the stand looking like he'd been slapped. Jennifer was pale. Her lawyers were whispering frantically, and Ethan felt something like hope flickering in his chest. Judge Chen called for closing arguments. Caldwell stood and tried to salvage what he could, but it was like watching someone bail out a sinking ship with a teaspoon. He talked about Jennifer's rights as a mother, about rehabilitation and second chances, but it all sounded hollow now. Sarah Kim stood up and kept it simple. Your Honor, this case was never about what's best for Lily. It was always about what Richard Holloway wanted. Jennifer Vale is a pawn, Ethan Vale is a target, and Lily is collateral damage. The only question before you is whether you're going to let a billionaire use this court to punish people who won't do what he says. Judge Chen didn't need long to decide. I've reviewed all the evidence and testimony in this case, and I have to say, I'm appalled. Miss Vale, you abandoned your daughter 3 years ago and made no effort to contact her until someone paid you to care. That tells me everything I need to know about your motivations. Mr. Holloway, your interference in this case is unconscionable. You've manipulated the legal system to serve your personal vendetta, and I won't be a party to it. She looked at Ethan. Mr. Vale retains full custody. Miss Vale's petition is denied. Furthermore, I'm issuing a restraining order preventing Richard Holloway from any contact with Mr. Vale or his daughter. If he attempts to interfere in this family's life again, I'll hold him in contempt. The gavel came down. Ethan couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't process what had just happened. You won, Sarah said, and she was smiling. I won. You won. Claire threw her arms around him, and they stood there in the middle of the courtroom while people filed out around them. Jennifer left without looking back, her legal team already distancing themselves from the disaster. Richard stopped in the doorway and looked at Claire one last time. This isn't over, he said. Yeah, Dad, Claire said quietly. It is. He left, and for the first time in her life, Claire didn't follow. Outside the courthouse, Mrs. Chen was waiting with Lily. The little girl ran to Ethan, and he picked her up, holding her so tight she squeaked. Did we win? She asked. We won, Bug. So I get to stay with you? Forever. And Claire too? Ethan looked at Claire, who was crying and smiling at the same time. Yeah, Claire too. Lily wrapped her arms around his neck. Good. Because I already told everyone at school she was going to be my mom. Claire started crying harder. I'm not trying to replace... I know, Lily said seriously. But can you be like a bonus mom, since my first one didn't work out? I can try to be a bonus mom. Cool. Can we get ice cream now? They got ice cream. They sat in the same cracked vinyl booth at the same shop they'd gone to after Lily's play. And this time, nobody was worried about court or custody or what might happen next. They just ate ice cream and let Lily talk about unicorns and school and her friend Madison, who still had terrible opinions about horses. Later, after Lily was in bed and Mrs. Chen had gone home, Ethan and Claire sat on his front porch in the dark. The street was quiet, the kind of quiet that felt like peace instead of loneliness. "What now?" Claire asked. "Now we figure out what your life looks like." "I need to find an apartment, a real one, that I pay for myself." "You could stay here." "Ethan, I'm serious. It's small, and the hot water's questionable, and Lily snores like a chainsaw, but it's yours if you want it." Claire looked at the house, at the peeling paint, and the crooked porch rail, and the light in Lily's window where her drawings were taped to the glass. "I've never lived anywhere that felt like home before." "Does this feel like home?" "Yeah, it really does." "Then stay, not because you have to, because you want to." She kissed him, and it felt different than before. Less desperate, more certain. Like they'd fought through the storm and come out the other side still standing. Over the next few months, they built something that looked like a life. Claire found a job at a nonprofit that helped kids aging out of foster care. Work that mattered in ways the foundation never had. She made less money than she'd ever imagined making, lived in Ethan's spare room until they figured out how to navigate living together properly, and learned how to pay bills and do laundry and all the mundane things she'd never been allowed to learn. She was terrible at it. Burned dinner regularly, forgot to pay the electric bill twice, had a minor breakdown trying to file taxes. But she was learning, and that was the point. Every mistake was hers, every success was earned, and for the first time in her life, she understood what it meant to be accountable only to herself. Ethan's shop started turning around. Some of his old clients came back once word spread about the custody battle and how he'd won. New customers showed up, drawn by the story or the fact that Mrs. Chen told everyone in her church group to bring their cars to Ethan. It wasn't easy. It was never going to be easy. But it was sustainable in a way it hadn't been before. Lily thrived. She had Claire at her school events and Ethan at pickup and Mrs. Chen for sleepovers. And she treated all of it like it was perfectly normal, because to her, it was. One night she asked Ethan if Claire was going to marry him, and when he said he didn't know, Lily rolled her eyes like he was being deliberately obtuse. "You should ask her," Lily said, "before someone else does." "Who else is going to ask her?" "I don't know, Dad, but you should probably hurry up." He did, eventually. Not with a grand gesture or an expensive ring, just a quiet question on the same porch where they'd sat after the trial. Claire said yes before he'd even finished asking, and they stayed up until 3 in the morning making plans that would probably change and talking about a future that felt real for the first time. Richard tried one last time to interfere. He called Claire 6 months after the trial, his voice careful and controlled. "I'm willing to forgive this entire episode," he said, "if you come back. Take your position at the foundation, end this relationship, we can move forward." Claire was at Ethan's shop when the call came, watching him work under a Honda while Lily did homework in the office. She looked at this life she'd built, messy and imperfect and completely hers. "No," she said simply. "Claire, no, Dad. I don't need your forgiveness. I don't need your money. I don't need anything from you except for you to leave me alone." "You'll regret this." "Maybe. But it'll be my regret. And that's worth more than anything you could give me." She hung up, and she didn't cry. She just went back to watching Ethan work, and when he rolled out from under the car and asked if she was okay, she realized she actually was. A year after the trial, they moved into a bigger place. Nothing fancy, just a 3-bedroom house on the east side with a yard where Lily could play and a garage where Ethan could work on his own projects. Claire's old apartment, the one her father had paid for, was empty now. She'd given up the car, the credit cards, everything tied to the family money. It meant they struggled sometimes, meant they had to budget carefully and skip luxuries, but it also meant everything they had was theirs. The wedding was small. Mrs. Chen stood as Claire's witness, Sarah Kim stood for Ethan, and Lily was the flower girl in a purple dress she'd picked out herself. They got married in the courthouse, the same building where they'd fought for the right to be together, and afterward they had dinner at the Thai place where they'd gone on their 3rd date. It wasn't the wedding Claire had probably imagined when she was younger. There was no orchestra, no guest list of hundreds, no reception at a 5-star hotel. But standing there with Ethan and Lily, eating noodles and laughing at terrible jokes, Claire understood something her parents had never learned. Happiness wasn't about having everything you wanted. It was about wanting what you had. Lily started 4th grade that fall. She was 9 now, tall for her age, with Ethan's stubbornness and Claire's tendency to overthink things. She still drew pictures, still talked about unicorns, still asked hard questions that didn't have easy answers. And every night, When Ethan and Claire tucked her in, she had two parents who chose to be there instead of one who felt obligated and one who'd been paid to care. One evening, nearly 2 years after the trial, Ethan was closing up the shop when Claire appeared with takeout and that look that meant she had something to say. "I ran into my mother today," she said, setting the food on his desk. "Yeah?" "At the grocery store. She pretended not to see me at first, but I caught her looking." Claire sat down. "I said hello." "How did that go?" "Awkward." "She asked if I was well. I said I was. She said I looked thin." Claire smiled. "Then she asked about you, about us." "What did you tell her?" "That we're happy. That Lily's doing great in school, that we're saving up to expand the shop." She paused. "She said she was glad. I think she actually meant it." "That's something. It's not forgiveness, not really, but it's not nothing either." Claire looked at him. "I don't need them anymore, Ethan. I thought I'd always need them, always be looking for their approval. But I don't. I have everything I need right here." He pulled her close, and they sat there in the quiet shop with grease on the floor and bills on the desk, and a life that was harder than either of them had expected, but better than Claire had ever imagined. Because here was the truth that nobody had told Claire when she was growing up, the lesson she'd had to learn by living it. Freedom wasn't about having unlimited options or perfect circumstances. It was about having the right to choose, even when the choices were hard. It was about making mistakes that belonged to you, building a life that was yours, loving people because you wanted to instead of because you were supposed to. Her father had given her everything except that freedom, and Ethan, who had almost nothing, had given her the space to claim it for herself. That was worth more than any trust fund or family name or perfectly curated life. A few weeks later, on an ordinary Tuesday evening, Claire walked through the door of their small house carrying groceries she'd budgeted for carefully. Lily was at the kitchen table doing math homework and complaining about fractions. Ethan was making dinner, burning the toast like he always did. The sink was full of dishes, there was a pile of laundry on the couch, and the light in the hallway still needed to be fixed. It was messy and chaotic and imperfect in every possible way. And as Claire set down the groceries and kissed Ethan and helped Lily with fractions she barely understood herself, she felt something she'd never felt in her parents' mansion or her expensive apartment or any of the carefully controlled spaces of her old life. She felt home. Not because it was perfect, because it was hers, and that, in the end, made all the difference.